This show is brought to you by Celltech MD, the leader in regenerative medicine, balancing your body from the inside out.
Get it. Welcome to the Heavyweights podcast. We are going to what's up, Tom? How you doing, man?
I'm good.
I'm just in tradition with our new little thing we're going to be doing, which we'll talk about here shortly. I'm eating the rest of my chicken and rice.
You're just trying to keep up is what you're trying to do.
I got to keep up with you because I got to keep the weight over a certain amount so I can be considered a heavyweight, right?
We can go by old school standards over 105.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that's what that's what they do in strongman anyways. Strongman, it's 105 and 105 and up.
I was gonna say I think like 105 is light in strongman, right?
Yeah, I mean it depends on the federation. Some like I think as like strongman core has a 265 class, but they're still considered open at like local shows. And then on USS, I think it's 275 and 308 are their subclasses.
Yeah, I've gotten down to, I think we talked about it though. Like I got as low as I was in like the low 220s because I didn't work out for like 3 months. You know? So and I just a lot of people have asked me like why are you gaining back weight and this and that or whatever, what you're doing. And like I want to go ahead and say it now since like this is a podcast, we can say whatever the hell we want to, and we're kind of talking about the heavyweight thing anyways.
Yeah.
No, I'm not on like copious amounts of anabolics or anything like that. I'm not on any more TRT than I was previously.
No.
But I just decided like, hey, like I'm getting older. I'm not like you. I'm not the type of person who has hard time losing weight. I'm the type of person who has a hard time gaining weight. I've always been that way my entire life. And I don't really have a lot of time left, I feel like at my age, to be big.
And at some point, especially for somebody like you with your frame, like it's funny you mentioned like me, like so with your frame too, like there's a law of diminishing returns. You're only going to be able to get so heavy before it's detrimental to your health. And it's funny you mentioned like me and like having a hard time losing weight. Like I wouldn't say necessarily I have a hard time losing weight. It's just my frame carries weight differently. Like people laugh at me when I tell them I'm the runt of the litter in my family. Like I've got 3 brothers and all 3 of them are bigger than I am. And I'm the second oldest. Like I have an older half brother. And the best part about it is his mom is tiny. Like she's Sicilian or something like that. And he's still bigger than I am. And then I have my 2 baby brothers who we've got the same parents. And both my baby brothers, like when we do like family photos and stuff, like I posted a family photo from like Christmas time or whatnot. And people were just like laughing because my 2, like I out angled the shit out of my brothers on purpose because I know how to do that on a photo and they just don't care. But like my 2 brothers are just wider than door frames. That's how my dad was. Like when my dad's family would all get together for like family photos, I had to stand in front with all the women.
I love that you use the term out angled because like even though you've been a weightlifter, like you've never done bodybuilding before or whatever, but you're still like a gym bro at heart because only like a true gym bro bodybuilder like would say something like that, you know, like you out angled me, bro. Like listen, you got to turn the shoulder in, get 100%. To the closest to the camera as you possibly can, 100%. And like, wait, I'm getting bigger.
And then just a little bit of a hold and flex as you're standing there too.
Well, yeah, you got to flex in a picture. Yeah, you can't.
I mean, it just cracks me up. So like weightlifting, it's funny. So like when I competed in Olympic weightlifting, heaviest I got was 335, and I was always one of these shorter guys because like when I competed. You had the Shane Mayers, the Cameron Swartz, and all that stuff. Kane Wilkes was just coming on at that time, but
they were all. Because aren't you legitimately? You're like 6'2", right? Like
I'm
a shoot.
6 foot. I'm 6 foot.
Oh, you're 6 foot. Oh, for some reason I thought you were 6'2".
No,
okay, like, so by wrestling or by dating app standards, you're 6'3".
Yeah. Right, 100%. And then, but then like in weight, so like, but now like in weightlifting circles, like I'm considered a bigger guy, which I find comical because in strongman and Highland games. I'm considered one of the smaller guys.
Yeah. A lot of it just has to do with weight though, you know, like, I mean, look, if you look at like Eddie Hall, like if we're talking about strongman, and you look at Brian Shaw, they both weighed 400 pounds, but Brian Shaw looked proper at 400 pounds, and Eddie Hall was wider than he was tall, because Brian Shaw's like 6'8", 6'9", Eddie Hall's like 6'3", right?
It blows my mind too when Eddie Hall lost like 100 pounds. Like,
and he still looks big.
He's still huge. I'm like, Jesus, man. Like, you don't realize like how rotund somebody is.
Yeah.
Until like they post like a transformation thing. Like Terry Hollins was another guy where like he actually got into bodybuilding because he was dating like a IFBB pro bikini person or physique or whatever she was for a while there. And so he got really hardcore into the diet, had abs and all this stuff. But like he was another dude. Like he's like 6'4", 6'5". I met him at the Arnold one year. And at his heaviest, he was like 400 pounds, and he got down to like 290, like 300, like on the button or something like that. And he's absolutely like shredded, but he's still, because he's like you said, like, cause he's 6'4" or whatever, like he looks proper. Whereas like Eddie Hall still looked like a fucking bowling ball walking around.
He's a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
He's literally built like a fire hydrant.
Yeah. He's just short and squat compared to all those guys.
I don't think it's just height though. I think it has to do with your joint and obviously your clavicle to waist ratio.
I think
those kind of things matter, because like definitely, I've been living for the last several years since I've known you. This is also, we talk about this multiple times. You guys have seen this or whatever. Tom and I have known each other for over a decade now. I think it's safe to say, right? Over a decade.
2011 is when we met.
Yeah, we've never met face to face.
In person.
Not once. 2024. We're living in this world and we've never met. Yeah. You can do that nowadays though. Like, I mean, I consider Tom a friend, man. And like, and I mean, I talk with you more than I talk a lot of my guy friends that live in town, you know what I mean? Oh, yeah. But it's crazy. One day we're going to figure out a time where we're going to meet and do something for sure. We got to figure that out. Maybe
we'll figure that
Arnold,
especially now that we're closer together or closer.
That's true. Yeah. You're not that far away right now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, cause I know in the one wrestling group chat that we had, like the talk was Sting's last match in Greensboro.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was one of the things.
And you actually got a chance to hang out with Rob too, right? Our friend Rob.
Anytime I'm at a weightlifting meet, Rob and I at least get together. We at least get together for a hug.
And that's the thing that sucks, is because I wanted to go to that and I forgot what it was, but it was literally impossible. I don't know if it was work or whatever it was.
It was AO finals, and I think it was when it was down in Atlanta, and you had just started your you were doing like the pools and the landscaping and the roofing and stuff.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah, it was 2000.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like it wasn't that long ago. Wow.
It was like right after COVID or right during.
Oh, no. There was one recently, like this last year, you came down for something, and I was in Florida. That's what it was.
Okay.
I was literally out of town the one time that you were in town. But but like going back to like the whole weight thing, I think that's where I'm at. It's like I don't have a whole lot more time for me to be able to gain weight and it be healthy. You know, I'm 40 years old. And you know, I'm not competing anymore in anything. But I just wanted to give myself like a goal, like let me do something back in the gym, because out for so long. Right. And I wanted to see how high I can push and still feel good. Right. Because like, I mean, I'm sure when you were at 335 at your heaviest, you know that whenever you break a new boundary with weight, you feel miserable. But once you stay there for a little bit, you go down, and when you come back to it, you don't feel as bad. I remember being 220 for the first time, you know, because at 28, I was 165 pounds, right?
Yeah.
I remember being 220 for the first time and not being able to hardly breathe, and I had sleep apnea because I just felt so just miserable. Well, but now, you know, it has no 220 is like light for me. I feel like nothing.
Well, and that's what's funny, because that's what I was talking. I've told people about this too, like with my weightlifting story. Like when I first met Glenn, I was like 265, 275, and he hadn't seen me yet. And he was just like, I have to figure out whether you're going to go down to 105, which is 231, or you're going to be a super and you got to put some weight on. Like as soon as I walked off the plane, he was just like, you're going to be a super. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm like, what do I got to do? He goes, you need to start eating everything and anything, no restrictions. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I did it the wrong way that time, because I had never been over 300 pounds. Like the heaviest I had gotten was like 290 in college. And that was, you know, my freshman year of college, where it's like I had 3 meals every day where I could just eat as much as I wanted at those meals, because it was the cafeteria. I wasn't doing multiple sports or activities. I literally was just going to class and then training, because my freshman year I just did track. I did football my sophomore year, but like my freshman year I just did track. And so like I literally was like spending either my time in the classroom, in my dorm room, in the cafeteria, or in the weight room. Like that was it. and I got huge.
Good times,
But,
though, dude. Good
oh,
times.
100%.
I used to watch the videos that Muscle Driver put out, and I remember watching you back in the day, like on
Well, but
YouTube or whatever it was. You were a beefy boy, dude.
well, that's what I'm saying. So like I put on weight the wrong way. Like I remember people,
Yeah.
I used to like FaceTime people and they would get so like they'd be like, "What are you doing?" Because like I would have like a blender just sitting. Yeah, I'd have a blender sitting here while I was talking to them. Like I'd get home from training and like if I hadn't eaten enough, like I lived with Donnie Shanko, which didn't help either, and Kevin Cornell, and then Glenn. Like we all lived in the same house.
Oh,
And like
wow.
I would be making myself like a protein shake, and they would be like putting ice cream or like Reese's peanut butter cups or whatever in this blender. And it was too thick to drink. So I'd literally be sitting there talking to people like I'm doing now on a video chat with a spoon in a blender and just eating that in between like talking and stuff. And my mom would be like, what the hell are you doing? So my point
Well,
was
to get
like,
me, he was like Cartman, like, I need my
yeah,
weight gain of
yeah,
3,000.
pretty much. But like, so I got over 300 pretty quickly. And then after I left Muscle Driver, I lost a ton of weight because I was doing grid and, just trying to get a little healthier. And so I got down to lowest, I think it was like 255, 260. But like now, I was telling you, like I walk around at like 285, 290 when I'm not training for like strongman or anything like that. And it's crazy how much better I feel when I get around 300. Because like for the longest time, I had a mental block. Like if I got close to 300 pounds, I'd start panicking because I
Really?
just remember how I felt and like
Oh, yeah.
how like just whatever. And I was like, I don't want to do that again. But like I've gotten over 300. I think a couple times I've gotten to like 305. And it's just a completely different way that my body carries it versus now. And the one thing I've noticed now too is training. There are specific things that if I train, I put on a lot of weights. Like for in particular, this last strongman core nationals, we had power stairs, yoke, and stones. And those are very heavy on like your erectors, your trunk. Like, and so when I'm training my trunk a lot and like training heavy with like trunk type movements like that, I put on a ton of weight. So I think for nationals this past year, I walked in at like 305.
When you train heavy, or not when you train heavy, meaning like when you get heavier, do you
Mhm.
notice that your back takes a beating? Like you have a back pump, so to speak, like from the bodybuilding standpoint? Like, do
I'll be
you
I've never had a back pump, like low back
really?
pump or anything like that. I've so like I have a natural kyphotic curve, so my upper back rounds out. So everybody always thinks my erectors are like super big, but it's really just my spine pushing them out. Like
Yeah.
it's called like hunchback syndrome or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. And so
Kyphosis. Yeah.
I've always had like a stronger back as a result. And I've never had issues, knock on wood, in terms of like low back pump. Like
I have.
I can count on one hand how many times I've pulled something in my back. Like
I think
if I pull something, it's always usually like in my shoulder or my bicep that I'll pull
I guess you
something.
just have a healthy back. That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
Because for me, I have that. I have a L5S1 is where I have the parts fracture at, and I've
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
had that issue. So while I've had a strong back, like I mean, I pulled. I think my best pull was at 230 with 700 pounds. Right, that's a pretty respectable pull. But like
Yeah.
if I do over 5 reps, my back just like I get a pump, and whenever I'm heavier. I like right now, like I've just within the last week or two since I've bumped over 250, I've noticed like, man, like I can't do RDLs like I used to because I'm getting a back pump and I'm not feeling in my hamstrings. Like I'm having to go to like
Yeah.
more dumbbells as opposed to like doing heavy RDLs. Not because the RDLs are heavy. I feel I'm stronger actually,
I was actually
but
just gonna ask you that. Like doing extra like hinge movements like RDLs, good mornings, things like that. Do you see more benefit out of like a barbell or dumbbells?
well, like I just said, I think it has to do with how your body reacts. Like I said, because my back, like while I had a fairly strong pull, for bodybuilding purposes and for building like mass on the back of your legs, I
Mhm.
found that, pre-exhausting and then dumbbells, you
Yeah.
just feel it. You connect more. I can do a really, really aggressive stiff-legged deadlift, but when
Yeah.
I do that, I'm not going to go heavy. I don't go
Yeah.
heavy, if you're trying to feel it because, like we said, now you're worried about the movement. You know what I mean? You can't
Yeah.
put so much weight on the bar to where you're worried about the movement. You have to have the right amount of weight to where you're worried about the muscle if you're doing bodybuilding. It's just a
The one
completely different perspective.
the one thing I've actually started to notice, especially as I've gotten older and into more coaching, is for me in particular, I started to notice a benefit to this, and then obviously started playing it off to putting it on in my athletes programs and them getting a big benefit out of it is single leg work and single arm work. Because like I could sit there and like I could be that asshole in the gym repping out, you know, like 10 plates on the leg press, like no problem or whatever. But I've actually noticed for like size, mobility, and like longevity, I am getting so much more. Like yesterday, for instance, like I had a descending reps increasing in weight set for single leg presses. And I actually got more work, I feel like, in my quads out of doing that than had I done the same rep scheme with two legs at once.
Yeah.
And especially in my hamstrings, I noticed because like when I would do like double leg, like RDLs, straight leg deadlifts, good morning, stuff like that, I would notice like my back doing a majority of the work and not my ass or my hamstrings. But now that I'll do single leg good mornings, single leg RDLs, stuff like that, I notice like my hamstrings and even sometimes like depending on the exercise, like my groin will get a little bit more work in as well. And I like for me now, like I'm convinced like that is how my supplementary work always is structured now. It's always going to be single arm, single leg because I just get so much more out of it. And like you were talking about earlier, in terms of like injuries and stuff and pulling shit, I can keep the weight lighter and still get the same
Yes.
effect that I'm looking for
Yeah,
without,
you can cut the weight in half, right?
yeah, without
Keep it on one side of your body.
without pulling or straining something or pushing it too far to the point where you're like out for a couple days and can't do anything because you've like strained something too much.
Also, everything that you do athletically is typically bounding off of one foot or doing something
Yeah.
off of one side. There's very few things in sports where we're perfectly aligned using
Mhm.
both of our feet, at the same rate of force, right?
Right.
So I mean, there's something to be said about that. But yeah, really, I think it's just the ability, like you said, the lighter weight like that, and then you're able to focus on a single muscle. The more you can isolate a muscle, the more you're going to be able to contract it, the more you're going to push blood in there and blow the balloon up, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
And then that's going to facilitate the sarcoplasm regrowth. Now there does have to be a specific load, like a stimulus. Like you can't
Yeah.
like what was it Dorian Yates used to say, like you can tap a stick of dynamite like 1,000 times with a pencil and it's not going to do anything, but if you hit it one good time with a hammer, it's going to blow up. So there
Yeah.
is a certain stimulus that you have to have. It has
Right.
to be hard. There's no way around that. So you see all these guys doing like, oh well, I get a better contraction if I'm like if I'm in this position for my lat, and then like I go and I stand on one foot, and then I got a Bosu ball here, and then I'm just squeezing really good. I get really good. Now you're doing it with 3 pounds. You need some type of fucking
Right.
stimulus.
Well, that's why
But
I also don't understand dudes that don't track their shit, their weights, like
yeah,
for everything.
yeah,
Like I understand, I used to like be one of those guys that would just track my main lifts and then just write my sets and reps for my accessories. I've actually like in the last like 2 to 3 years, I will write down or I will make a note of like what I did for my accessory weights too. Because like I'm a creature of habit. So like if I find things that work really well based on whatever I'm doing for that day, I will tend to repeat them. But like you were just saying, like it don't matter if I did 50 pounds on a single leg dumbbell RDL 3 weeks in a row. If by like that third week, like I'm not getting any stimulus anymore from it, like I need to increase it from, 50 for a set of 15, try 55 for a set of 15, then try, 60 for a set of 15 or 57 and a half if I have that luxury or whatever it is. And I honestly don't understand with all the shit that guys and girls, but I'm talking more about the guys because we're more stubborn than women are, have access to in the world today with like social media and their phones and all this tech. Like you guys will record every little thing that you have to say and think about while you're doing your training, but you won't take 2 seconds to write down what you fucking did on your leg extensions.
I think that is a slippery slope, Tom. And I'll explain why. I think that there's a lot of good things that come from tracking your information.
Mm-hmm.
And I think depending on what you're trying to do and what your goals are, it's more
Yeah.
or less important, right? If you're a strength athlete, then obviously you need to. I
Yeah.
mean, there's zero reason why you should ever not track the weights that are on the bar, because the entire purpose of your existence is to put more weight on the bar in whatever your respective lift is. If it's weightlifting, powerlifting, or even like a sport like Highland or strongman or something
Yeah.
like that. Well, maybe not so much Highland, right? But like you said, when strongman, you have like a barrier of entry that you have to hit, but you're at least trying to get to that point, right?
Yeah.
So it's still about the weight. I do think that it's not as important, and in some cases, it can actually be detrimental if aesthetics or building muscle is your goal. And here's why: when you're doing these things, like you said, like I said, well, last week I did 50-pound dumbbells on RDLs, right? And those felt pretty good, right? Well, this week I need to do 55, right? And you can do 55, but if you sacrifice your ability to have the mind muscle connection at 55, and you don't get a pump at 55, well, then you would have done better doing 50, and you don't necessarily need linear periodization. So
I guess more what I meant was just like making sure that you're still getting the stimulus. Like
yes,
you'll get the guys that'll just use the same weights over and over again and then complain that they're like stagnating. And it's like,
yes.
well, did you increase the rep sets? Did you increase the weight?
And
Did
that's
you
more the thing,
did you
like
increase the time under tension? Because like that's one thing. One of my buddies, Taylor Gone, when I had pulled my hamstring, uh, um, yeah, I pulled my hamstring from Moss Wrestling or whatever, and he and I were kind of talking about it. And he was talking about when he pulled his hamstring. One of the things that helped him recover was he was doing like not eccentrics, but like longer like tempo work. So like he's like, I had like 15 pounds on like a leg extension machine, but I was doing like a 10-second curl, a 5-second hold, and then a 10-second relax. And he's like, I was doing that for sets of 10 reps. You think 15 pounds, 10 reps, that's not a huge deal. He goes, but when you're doing it under that elongated time under tension, he goes, it was wrecking my hamstrings. He goes, and I was able to like recover and stuff like that. So that's more what I meant. Like, not necessarily like you're not increasing the weight, so you're not getting stronger, but like you're not making sure that the stimulus that you're trying to achieve, which is doing a hamstring curl, trying to get bigger hamstrings or more of a pump on your hamstrings, like you're not adjusting the
that's
stimulus. You're not adjusting the stimulus to make sure that you're achieving that.
that's it. That's where the little special extra comes. It's like you have to be aware of yourself. If you're going to track your information, you need to be copious with your notes and saying,
Yeah.
did this last week, didn't feel it that great. And then maybe you do the same thing this week, but maybe you feel it better. Right.
Right.
Or like, got a ridiculous pump last week. This week I didn't get a pump. Okay, why? Are you hydrated? Did you take a pre-workout last week and this week you didn't? Did you not
Yeah.
sleep last night? There's so many factors that come into play because while the pump isn't everything in bodybuilding, if
No.
you're not getting blood into your muscle and you're not feeling that contraction, you're probably not going to get the results that you're looking for as far as building actual thicker, stronger, well, not so much stronger, but bigger muscle fibers.
Yeah.
So like I said, I think it's a slippery slope, but I definitely agree with you that, you need to at least know what you're doing. Like, let's say, like for me, we'll talk about, because we were going to talk about it today anyways. I tweaked my somewhere around my IT band, hamstring, quad where it ties in right there. I'm not exactly sure where it's at. I tweaked it. I don't think I tore it. There's not really any bruising, but my dumb ass, I was doing hack squats and it was at the end of the workout. I was 16 sets deep into my leg workout. It was literally the last thing that I did. And normally I'll do hack squats. I do my compound movements like my squat or my hack squat. I don't do leg press that much because I'm mainly trying to grow my quads. So hack squat's really good, but I do it with very light weight because I do it at
Yeah.
the end of my workout. I'm completely fatigued. So on like a Life Fitness, I'm doing one, maybe two plates on each side. Which, back in the day when I was whatever, like I could load 6, 7, 8 plates on there fresh and knock out, 6, 10 reps or something like that. But like, so there were these kids that were doing it and they had just started and I didn't want to have to wait on it. So I asked them what they were doing. The guy said, we're going up to 4. And I'm like, that's fine. I'll just do a couple here or whatever. And they started putting plates on. I did my one set. I did my, my set of 2 and it was great.
Yeah.
They were doing like 2 or 3 reps, I think, warming up. I was doing like 10 to 12. And they put on 3 plates. I'm like, I don't feel like taking the plates off. I'll just do it. It's not that much weight, right?
That's,
And then they put on 3 1/4. And again, I was just like, that's fine. I did it. It wasn't that bad. And I did it. And I'm doing my slow eccentric, because I go down very slow. I go down all the way. And when I do a hack squat, like I said, I'm doing it very biased so I'm actually on the balls of my feet. My heels come up
yeah.
on the very bottom, right? So I'm simulating a sissy squat is what I'm doing
Yeah.
in the hack squat,
So
which
more like
obviously makes it,
vertical shin, vertical back,
yes,
just like
as
whatever.
much
Yeah.
knee over toe as you can, right?
Okay.
Just for that extra stretch on the quad. And obviously it makes it much harder. But again, I'm not doing it for weight. But so this, I was like, it feels fine. So I went down to the bottom and started coming up, and I felt and heard a I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
fuck. And so I didn't even finish. I actually just put my foot off. And fortunately, I had asked them to spot me. And I mean, it wasn't heavy. It's just, when you get older, ever since I've broken my back and my neck, I injure myself quicker. And that was a wake up call to me like, yep, there you go, Justin. You cannot let your ego get in the way
No,
or just be lazy, like having these kids take weights and go back on and off or whatever. Just take the damn weights off. Now, it's not torn. It's okay. But like
you just
it
pulled it.
definitely is. I pulled it somewhere, and I've never been pulled in this area before. It's on the side. It's almost like on my IT. I'm not even sure if it is my quad, but definitely like a squatting position, getting
I
off and
say it
out
could be
of the
like a
toilet.
sartorius or something.
It could be, yeah, like getting on and off the toilet and stuff like that is a little precarious. But I mean, I did my cardio today, walking, had no problem. Then I did the bike, the recumbent bike, a little bit, and I'm just slowly working that up. But there you go. That's what we're talking about. Time under tension. We're talking about really like how can we not hurt ourselves and continue to put volume in and slowly grow, because the strength sports and bodybuilding sports, like, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint.
100%.
So you train through your injuries and all those kind of things. What is something that you've done, um like you said recently, as now you're not a spring chicken anymore either?
No.
What are some of the things that you've implemented in your training, since you train a little bit differently than me? Well, not
Yeah.
a little bit, a lot differently than me.
The big thing though, just to piggyback off your last point too, that I think people definitely need to take into consideration too, is not only their age when they're training, but their training age.
Training age, absolutely.
Because like
Just
I
talking
try
about that today.
I try to talk to people about like the things I've done. And I'm not saying this to like one up anybody, but I have people who will try to like go tit for tat with me. And I'm like, listen, I'm not saying like it's not like the whole Ron Swanson, like I know more than you, but I literally spent four
I've been
years.
through more than you. You can
I've
say
been
that.
there, but that's the thing is like you try to talk to people about it, and like unless people experienced it or have a slight idea, they don't get it. Like my muscle driver days, I put my body through like absolute hell for 4 straight years. Like I'm pretty damn sure in those 4 years I took maybe 5 total weeks off of it was 9 sessions a week, double sessions on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, going heavy, pushing yourself to the absolute limit, doing the stupidest things. Like we all still talk about how dumb we trained.
Yeah, you
Like,
guys were doing like max out, like
yeah, like
Bulgarian shit
I mean,
without the
like,
drugs.
yeah. Case in point, like I mapping out just any sort of a regular week with muscle drivers. So you'd have Monday AM sessions, depending on where we were in the year in terms of what competition we had coming up. You were doing either like 80% full lifts, snatch, clean, and jerk, plus you were doing a front squat or a back squat, building up to a heavy set. That was your morning. Come back in the evening, you had a complex or some sort of heavy lift, whether it was like hangs, a complex, block work, whatever, of both snatch and clean. And then that was that was pretty much what you would do. And then based on where you were, like if you were really at the beginning of a year, because we only really pulled heavy for like 6 weeks out of the entire year. So like if you were at the beginning of the year, then you'd have your heavy pulls after the fact too that you had to do. And if we did snatch, you did like it wasn't like you picked one. Like we would do our heavy snatch
Your
work,
nervous
heavy,
system is just
oh yeah,
fucking fried all the time.
heavy snatch pulls, then you do your heavy clean work, heavy clean pulls. Like that's just how we structured it.
You still got
And
squat.
well, nah, so if you squatted in the morning, we didn't squat in the evening. We only would
No,
do
but I'm just
doubles.
saying, I mean, you still have
Oh
to
yeah,
add
yeah.
squats in there at
Oh
some
yeah, yeah.
point. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like,
so that would come in on Tuesday. Tuesday would be a technique and strength day, and it would be like either like no hook, no feet, or heavy powers, and then it would be like your push presses and your squat work. Then Wednesday would be the same thing, like 80% ish work, heavy front squats in the morning, and then you had your heavy complexes, something different than what you did on Monday. And then Thursday would be again more no hook, no feet work, more heavy powers, and then squatting and pressing work. But it was usually percentage. We did a lot of Texas method. So like Tuesday would be building up to like not necessarily like a max set of five, but like you would build up to like a moderate set of five. Thursday would be like 3 sets of 5 at like a percentage of whatever you did on Tuesday. And then you had Friday would be come in 80% snatch, 80% clean. Done. Then you would do max out snatch, clean, and jerk in the evening on Friday. And then Saturday would be like a max squat session. But that was it literally for like 4 years straight. So like when I joke around with people about like my training age being way higher than my physical age, it's because like I expedited the process during those 4 years.
look,
And
yeah.
so like now my big thing is like I will not I will do it every once in a while, only because I have to. But like I will not train more than like 2 days in a row.
Oh,
Like
really? That's interesting.
I train 2 days in a row, have to take a day off because
I,
otherwise I will like hurt myself.
yeah,
Like
the
I told
training
you,
age is something a lot of people, I think, it's not talked about enough.
yeah,
And I don't think there's enough studies done about it. But I mean, look, if you're going hard and heavy, I feel like you've got about 10 years in any game,
agreed.
right? And be it bodybuilding or weightlifting or I mean MMA, right?
Yeah,
You've got about 10 years. You know, they say it takes 10,000 hours and
yeah.
you know, maybe you've got about 1,000 hours a year and like that's to become an expert and a pro. But I mean, that's all you really have. Now, can you pan it out a little bit if you do it smart and you start younger? Yes, you can. But
100%.
also somebody that doesn't start training until they're 30, they might be in a little bit better position than somebody that started training at 22 and now they're
Right.
30.
I
You
mean,
know?
that's why, especially I always reference Olympic weightlifting. That's why you see a lot of these junior and youth guys not pan out once they get to the senior level.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a bump card they call in wrestling, right? You've only
Yeah,
got so many hits you can take. You've only got so many 100% max out effort attempts, I think, in your life, right?
100%.
Like you know, your life is on the line if you don't fight, you know, if you don't make this pull, like the stuff we say in our, you know, the stuff they see all the memes of the dudes saying like, if I don't make this deadlift, I'm gay and my entire family dies or something
Yeah.
like that, you know, like those memes. But like you know, I think that's important. I would love to see if there are studies. If there are, I'm not aware of them of the effects of training age and how it correlates to someone's
So
actual age.
uh I don't know if it's very similar to this or not, but I know Glenn, that was essentially what his doctoral thesis was on. It was on hormonal response in
Mhm.
terms of training stimulus at like various points in a training career. But he ended up this was, if you know Glenn Penley, this was a typical Penley move. He decided to not defend his thesis for his doctorate and instead sold it for a couple $1 million to the Carmichael Training Center because they offered him a shit ton of money for the research and the data.
And that's probably how he started Pinlay, right?
That's exactly how he started Penley.
Yeah.
He
I
literally
mean,
took that
so,
he took
you
that
know,
money, turned around and started making barbells out of it. Like
hey,
it was just funny when he told us that story because I'm just like after a while when you knew him, you're like, oh yeah, that tracks. Like that is 100% something that you would fucking do.
you know, I've met the guy several times. I never had the honor of knowing him well or really hanging out with him or whatever.
He's
He
an odd
definitely
dog.
had an influence on my, you know, I got a chance to meet and hang out with Dave Spitz before what was
Yeah.
oh I'm sorry, it was after he left Cal Strength.
Yeah, yeah.
So and I trained there a little bit, but no, I never got a chance to. And then you know, obviously I started hanging out and you know with John and all those guys.
Yeah, yeah.
That was all after that kind of stuff happened. But I definitely
Dave's
was
in
a
my
big fan of Penlay, and I think there's a lot of people in the sport now that don't even know who the hell he is,
no.
but they probably lift on one of those bars, you know,
Oh
or
yeah.
they
I
lift
mean,
some of
Dave's
those
and my
shit.
relationship got infinitely better after I left Cal Strength. But I feel like that was just, and I mean, I'm sure he won't mind me saying this. I feel like it was just because him and Glenn were such opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of how they conduct their business.
Yeah,
Glenn, like, if Glenn wasn't going to do something, he wasn't going to do it. And you were not going to convince him. Whereas, like, Dave was much more of like a politician. Like, Glenn was a mad scientist, Dave was a
yeah.
politician. Like,
Yeah,
Dave was,
but Dave's also the kind. I mean, Dave is the kind of like he made his money in like real estate, right, and investments. So like he was kind of like
yeah,
I feel
he
like
had,
Dave's pretty laid back, but he's also the kind of guy that's like he's not going to change his mind if somebody tells just because somebody
no, no,
tells him
no, no.
so.
And I didn't mean that like Dave was like easier to like convince of something. I'm just saying like what you just said. Like Dave's like, I'll just wait for you to come around.
Yeah,
Whereas like Glenn is just like, no.
yeah,
Like, and it
yeah.
was just like, and like the two of them, it was like the immovable object met the unstoppable force with the two
I
of
could
them.
see that. Yeah,
And it
I
was
could
so
see
like I
that.
said, like it was, and it was weird because at that time when I was there at Cal Strength, we were kind of like stuck in the middle. And so you were kind of like pitted against each other because like I worked for Dave and I worked for Glenn. Like I helped him with a lot of Glenn with a lot of his level one courses that he taught because he refused to teach the USAW level ones. And then I coached on the track and field at a high school with the track and field thing. And so I spent a lot of time with Dave. So like I saw both sides of their thing, but like once the two of them were separate, mine and Dave's relationship got infinitely better. So like when I see Dave at weightlifting meets, like we hug and talk and ask about everything and stuff like that. And like I said, I just they're both super intelligent, very knowledgeable. Obviously, Dave's a good coach because he's got, you know, Wes
Yeah.
Kitts, who's an Olympian. Nathan Damron's going to be an Olympian. He's turned out how many flipping national
Well,
champions
he
at
just loves
Cal
the
Strength.
sport, you know, and
Yeah,
he's put so much of his fortune back into the sport. You know, you can't
yeah.
you can't not appreciate the guy. I mean, if you don't know how much, I mean, because yeah, Cal Strength and all that stuff, it makes money now, but it didn't for a long time.
No,
And I'm sure it doesn't make as much money as people think he does. He's put a lot of his fortune into the sport. And he's just the sweetest man in the world, man.
he's a
Like
good dude. He's
the,
a
the
very good
kind of
dude.
guy that like I had never met him before in my life. I was going on a cross country tour and we were going to do a stop there
Yeah,
at Cal Strength or whatever to do this. And he literally opened up his home to us, say, hey, come stay with my house. And like
yeah, yeah.
he's got like little towels and shampoos and like all this stuff. It's
Oh
like
yeah,
I'm
he's
staying
yeah,
in a
yeah.
5-star resort and
They
we're hanging
both
out
they
with him
both
and cooking burgers and bringing the pool. It's just like I've never met
yeah.
this guy before.
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
this.
it was like him and Glenn were very similar in that aspect, but their approach to it was very different. Like Glenn, I lived with Glenn for 6 months, slept on his couch. You know, he would not let me pay him rent or whatever. Dave and I had one conversation about throws training. And he literally came to me the next day. He goes, I just fired a coach at this high school. You're taking over their throws program. Like it was just like he's like, I don't care. Like you're doing it. Like I got you this job. Like you're gonna do way better than the schmuck that they had there. Like get to work, kind of a deal. Like they're like I said, they were very giving with their time, energy, and resources and stuff like that. And Dave still is. Like I call Dave 2, 3 rings, he'll pick up the phone. Or if he doesn't pick up the phone, he shoots me a text being like, hey, I'm in a meeting right now. I'll call you when I'm done.
Yeah.
Like they're the same way. Glenn was just an odd duck. Like I said, he was on the flipping spectrum.
Yeah.
And so it was hard for a lot of people to read him. But like once you got him to like sit down and open up, like the amount of knowledge that that man possessed was otherworldly.
I agree. Yeah, it's a lot like coffee. You know, we say coffee's mind wasn't the sharpest at the end or whatever, but
Yes.
he's forgotten more about weightlifting than most
Yes. And
other coaches
he's
ever will.
somebody that I regret not getting to know a lot more
Yeah.
because he was somebody that you heard about all the time. You just never got a chance to talk to him because of where he was located versus where I was located at the time.
So we got to wind down here. We only got a couple minutes left.
Let's do it.
We both got to go. I wanted to kind of close talking about, since we were talking about getting heavier and getting older and training age and
Get
injuries and all this
thick.
other kind of stuff. Get sick, get thick, or get big or die trying. Right. So
Something
like,
like that.
what's one thing that you changed in your training over the last like couple years as you've, I don't want to say wind down in the twilight, but you've just kind of evolved your training to be a little bit more towards someone that's a master's lifter type thing? What's one thing that you've changed that you've noticed has been the most effective thing for you to help?
My biggest like intangibles is I only track during the day in terms of like nutrition stuff. I track my protein and I track my water. When those two things are on point, I'm doing good. I have actually been a lot more conscientious of my sleep. So those three things, like in terms of like, I never
Sleep's number
used to.
one, man.
I never used to take care of those before. So those are my big three things. And then, like I said, then the other like intangible, I cannot train heavy more than 2 days in a row. Got to give myself that day off. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a whole day off. Like I'll go get a massage, or I'll go do some mobility work, or I'll go run or do some cardio or something along those lines. But like no heavy shit more than 2 days in a row, unless I absolutely have to because my schedule just doesn't allow for it later on in the week. Those are like my like 4, 3.5, whatever things that like just have helped me, maintain what I've built up over all those years and then staying relatively injury free. I will have bumps and bruises here and there and stuff like that, but like I have not had any really major injuries since adopting those like, 4 tenets in terms of how I do things.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I would say that mine is sleep. And then also if I don't get any sleep or if I'm stressed, when I walk into the gym, I don't go to the gym because if
Yeah.
I'm overly stressed from some type of external thing, like,
Yep.
whatever it be, finance, or I got, had to call the insurance company or something like that, that's when I hurt myself.
For
You
sure.
can't go into the gym already stressed.
No.
Because that's what you're doing in the gym. All right, man, we're going to come off here. We're going to try and do this thing a little bit more often. We're going to try and do this, I don't know, every week or something like that, but
Every week.
we're
Do
just
it.
going to kind of build on something and just these quick ones. And I love it. I think it's awesome. The Heavyweights podcast, guys, stay tuned for the next one coming at you.
Peace.